President Bola Ahmed Tinubu this week made changes in the hierarchy of the service chiefs in furtherance of efforts by the federal government to strengthen the national security architecture. In a statement issued on Friday by presidential spokesperson Sunday Dare, the president appointed General Olufemi Oluyede to replace General Christopher Musa as Chief of Defense Staff, with Major General Shaibu emerging as the new Chief of Army Staff, a position formerly held by the new Chief of Defense Staff. Air Vice Marshal Sunday Kelvin Aneke is the new Chief of Air Staff, while Rear Admiral Iba Abbas was appointed the new Chief of Naval Staff. Chief of Defense Intelligence, Major General EAP Undiendeye, retains his position. Dr. Kabir Adamu is a security and policy analyst. He joins me now to discuss this development. Good to see you, Dr. Kabir Adamu, and thank you for coming on this day live, the Sunday talk show. Dr. Adamu, what do you make of this latest development, the change of guards in terms of the security chiefs shortly after we heard speculations, rumors, submissions that there was an attempt at a coup, revolution in Nigeria? Does this have anything to do with that? Or is this just a pragmatic move by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? What should we expect? What does this mean in terms of policy rejection?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati, and I'm delighted to be here, as always. Ordinarily, this would not be an issue of much conversation because the president exercised his right. The terms and conditions of service of these service chiefs states that their tenure should elapse from 2 years, minimum of 2 years, and maximum of 4 years. So the ones that were removed have served up to those 2 years, the minimum. And so the president was at liberty, as it were, to change them. But like you rightly indicated, the change came on the heels of rumors of a coup attempt, or rather planning towards a coup. And some military officers were arrested. One of the hallmark indicators was the cancelling of the National Day celebration, at least one of the public events that was meant to mark that celebration was cancelled. And then, of course, that arrest was made, and those officers who were arrested were still in detention. And since then, we've seen several publications, several reports, some of them in the open source, others not so open, that have indicated in very clear terms that indeed there were attempts like that. So yes, this particular point has generated a lot of conversation, both within the military establishment, institution, and then outside the military establishment, especially among the diplomatic cycle. This third point I would like to raise is the composition of the new service chiefs. There has been an attempt to observe the national spread, the federal character. The three major ethnic groups are represented in the new service chiefs. But the fact that the highest of them, which is the Chief of Defense Staff, now bears the same ethnic identity and affinity like the president, has also evoked some form of chatter and conversation. Then, of course, the statement, which is the fourth point I'm raising, by the presidency, indicating that the change is meant to strengthen the national security architecture, has also evoked a lot of conversation. The general consensus, there are lots of conversations, but I'll try and summarize it. The general consensus is that the national security challenge is one of internal security. Almost all the issues Nigeria is confronted with are internal security challenges. And if you look at the functions of the military as stated in Section 217 of the Constitution, only one aspect gives them responsibility for internal security and in support of civil authorities. And so the question is, why were not those agencies, MDAs that were responsible for internal security, why were their leadership not changed? Why was it only the military? So that conversation is also out there. And then the last point I would like to raise that also evoked a lot of conversation is the fact that because of the tradition within the military, after appointments like this are made, where the seniority issue plays its card, then several generals may have to go. And at the moment, conversation is ongoing that between 50 to 100 generals may have to go as a result of this service chief's appointment. So these are some of the conversations at the moment. With regards to policy direction, every time a new leadership emerges, definitely that leadership is likely to come with his or her direction. In this instance, we've seen the current Chief of Defense Staff, when he was Chief of Army Staff, we've seen indicators to show us what direction. One of the things that I must commend him is the reduced media appearance that he has exemplified while he was Chief of Army Staff. And we're hoping that he would remain on that course, focus on achieving the core objectives. I'm sure the person who appointed him would have given him an indication of what he wants to achieve. But beyond that, the military institution has certain professional relevance and expectations. And so he needs to carve that out, manage the various stakeholders, the Ministry of Defense, the Defense Headquarters, the several components of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army, as well as the legislature, in order to meet the expectations of Nigerians, as well as the expectations of the class that he is representing. So we're expecting to see changes in that regard.
Okay. Dr. Adamu, I've had you. But you have still not answered my question. Whether this is, in response to the speculations about a coup plan, or whether this is just routine administrative, management, and what you think in terms of the capability of these new persons who have been appointed. So these are young men who have risen through the ranks. What is the guarantee that they will do anything different? We have every time we have changed service chiefs, but the problem remains. So what is it new that they will do, and what are they bring? What is so special about them, so that in 2 years' time we will not say, "Oh, we are changing service chiefs again." What are those key fundamental issues that this Nigerian government, not just the Tinubu government, has not been able to deal with? And then we have this cosmetic change of service chiefs, meaning nothing at the end of the day, as we have seen.
And I thought I answered your question when I said the president has, the powers, as it were.
Yeah, routine. He has that. He has that power routinely. Yeah, but we are not looking for routine.
Exactly.
We're looking for substance.
Well, in this instance, only the president probably can answer that question. He knows why he changed them at the time he did. But within the framework of the Constitution, the moment the service chiefs, on the basis of the conditions of their service, reach 2 years, then he's at liberty to change them, and he has done that. What is in the open is that he did it to enhance the national security architecture. Now, perhaps we can discuss that, which ties into your second question. There are 29 ministries, departments, and agencies within that national security architecture, what I prefer to call the national security enterprise. Now, the military represents, at best, only 4. And then, of course, you can add the Ministry of Defense, which makes it 5. Now, it is not logical to expect that 5 out of 29 would do the work of the entire 29. And so the responsibility for improving our national security expectations, as it were, should not be seen as a responsibility that service chiefs should achieve. If anything, we need to look more closely at the coordinators of our national security enterprise. And that is the minister, first starting with the National Security Advisor, the Ministers of Defense, Minister of Police Affairs, Minister of Interior. Now those, and then to an extent the presidency, those that have component to support our national security aspirations. Now they are the ones who at that strategic level decide the direction that we should go. In this instance, the expectation has been put on the service chiefs, as it were, the Chief of Defense Staff and then the 3 other service chiefs. Frankly, I don't expect any miracle in that regard, unless we change our approach and start looking at the entire national security enterprise, where we introduce accountability, where we hold regular National Security Council meetings as expected within the framework of the Constitution, where we introduce performance measurement in clear terms, and where the National Assembly, in accordance with the principles of the doctrine of separation of power, now exercise both legislative as well as oversight functions within the security sector to ask critical questions, based on appropriation. To say, okay, we've given you X amount of money.
Okay, Dr.
Those are the kind of changes I'm expecting. Otherwise, I'm not expecting much.
Okay, Dr. Adamu, I have heard you in terms of expectations. How about outcomes? Now, change of guards should mean something for the Nigerian people. What should we imagine in terms of outcomes? With all the problems we have, banditry is still there, kidnapping is still there, terrorism is still there, insurgency is still there. Some of these people, like the Chief of Defense Staff, he was leading the Operation Adinkai. So what is it that he will do that will be different in terms of outcomes? What will you say to these new boys who are now in the place?
In simple terms, Dr. Abati, the weight of the Nigerian people is actually on their head in terms of expectation. We're about to enter, the peak of the political cycle ahead of 2027 elections. And for those elections to hold, the current insecurity level will have to be contained. There's already a presidential directive saying that this security challenges must be contained by December 2025 to allow for the environment for elections to hold. So that's, I think, the number one expectation. How do they key into this national security enterprise with the support of the coordinators of the national security enterprise to allow for a containment of the current security situation? At the last count, we have nothing less than 6 terrorist groups that are active within Nigeria. In the northeast, you have at least about 3. In the northwest, you have 2. In the north central, you have another 2 or 3 that are currently active. Now, the responsibility for addressing that particular challenge lies squarely within the military formation. And so Nigerians would expect them to, continue what they were doing in their various positions before they were given this responsibility.
Okay.
Now they are at that very strategic level to do that.
Dr. Adamu, just to wrap up very briefly, what's your comment on the tenure of General Christopher Musa as Chief of Defense Staff? Because there are people who received this replacement with shock and surprise because they thought he was doing a good job. What do you think?
I fall in that category. I thought he was doing a great job. If you look at his visions, the visions are things that every professional military officer would want to relate with. In the sense that he talked about interoperability, he talked about synergy, he was able to manage some of the core challenges within the military establishment. And so to that extent, we felt he was doing quite well. Some of his gaps included constant appearance in the media. And some of us felt that that was not so good for someone at that level. So just like I mentioned that sometimes within our conversation, I hope that this new one would learn from that. Another area that some felt was the constant disagreement between him and some of the other players within the security sector in terms of the professional direction that should be followed. One key example is this peace pact between bandits and some of the state authorities. He was very clear as a professional. He did not support that, but it appears that some persons in government supported that. So there were areas of disagreement that may have led to his removal. But overall, he was a professional. He carried his work with dignity, and I think he remained well respected within the military establishment for the several things he has done and the legacies he's leaving behind.
Okay, on that note, Dr. Adamu, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show.